I am an African.
Just moving on to, I guess, another theme with regards to we just want to get an inside view of politics and how it works, because I think there is a sort of like outside inside. People don't understand how things function within. I think UNIP, which was the first pardon me. Oh, I thought that was I think UNIP stayed, which was the first ruling party of Zambia, stayed in power for 27 years. The movement for multi-party democracy, your party, stayed in power for 20 years. The Patriotic Front stayed in power for 10 years, and UPND are currently in power now. The question would be, why do ruling parties collapse after leaving office in Zambia, or basically have these internal disagreements after leaving office? Essentially, we don't really see a, like, in the US you have these basically two party systems that keep on going and have been going for multiple years. But in
Dominicans,
Zambia,
yeah.
so in Zambia you sort of have, or in other African countries you have, well, I think for most African countries the party that led them to independence is still there. But with Zambia's case, you sort of see UNIP, then the next one comes in, then the next one comes in, and the next one, but you don't really see political power staying and maybe gunning for the next election.
I think there are several factors, and there's need for some scientific research on this matter. We can only assume, especially that being leader of the movement for multi-party democracy, I have a hands-on, some kind of experience on this issue. One of the issues, and I'm not saying it's the only issue, that makes these former ruling parties struggle to survive after they lose power. One of the issues, first of all, depends on the leadership, the Superman, leadership, where one leader becomes almost a god. And therefore, once they're out of power and according to democratic requirements, they step aside and another president is elected. And the people just can't get over the fact that the previous leader is no longer leader. So, some of those who used to eat off his hands are going to continue to push that he comes back and unsettles the democratically elected leader and try to go back into history and in the past. It happened to UNIP. Kenneth Kaunda stepped aside, and they elected Kebi Musokotwane as a new president. Before long, he was ousted, and a coup or arrangement that removed him from office to replace him again by President Kenneth Kaunda. That brought, a deterioration of the political party, and it has been very difficult for UNIP to rise. We come to our own situation, the movement for multi-party democracy. President Rupia Banda, who was the last one who led the party through that loss, stepped aside and resigned. And when another election was approaching after President Sata died, the former president decided to come back. But coming back to a party which already had a democratically elected president, decided to work with the systems that he left to oust the president. That was, in this case, myself. And they succeeded in ousting, removing me out of power so that President Rupia Banda can come back. And when we went to court, we won the election. But that destabilization injured the political party. The Zambians wanted to move on, and they were not patient enough to wait for us to solve our problems. But, they wanted to move on to something that is less dramatic. So that's how come the the PF under Michael Sata won the election and beat us. Because, or rather, no. I've gone ahead of myself. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So now we have the UPND that has taken over after PF lost the election. And the same thing is repeating itself. We are seeing that the former president, President Lungu, has indicated that he has decided to come back into politics. It's no rocket science. The same thing that happened to UNIP, the same thing that happened to MMD is definitely going to happen to, the PF. That's just the way it is. But that is one thing that has really, the internal problems are the ones that have caused that these former ruling parties are not able to perform well to return power in the manner that it happens in other countries.
Huh. Yeah, I think that's
Okay,
sorry, you can go ahead, Zengi. Sorry.
No, that was super insightful. Now, from talking about parties that can't stay in power, let's just brush on, if you can talk about this real quick, leaders that overstay, if you like, in power. All right, so we've got the president of Equatorial Guinea, Teodoro Obiang, uh, and he has been in power for about 40 years. Yoweri Museveni, Paul Biya, all of them have a single thing in common, and that's they have all been in power for 30 years at least, which is longer than the average age of an African today, which is 20. You know, and
Yeah.
so basically, we just want to figure out, why is it that African leaders want to stay in power for so long, and why do they keep on changing their constitution and changing their terms for just to stay in power for as long as possible, considering, they're just growing older and older in terms of the gap between the average African and the age of the leaders, you know. And the funny thing is, many of them come in as a young revolutionary, and then 50 years down the line, they're still there parroting the young revolutionary thing. So, what is this problem that we have with long overstays of power by certain individuals?
I used to answer that question differently when I was younger. I'll go out there and shoot at these long-serving leaders. But I've now come to discover the problem is not necessarily the length of time they stay in office. The failure of African governance and leadership is in the failure of the leaders to unselfishly provide leadership and provide for the citizens that voted for them. Zambia and Africa is not the only area that has had long-serving leaders, and now we have made it an African problem. I mean, look at the United Kingdom. We had Margaret Thatcher stayed there for a long time. The Queen herself stayed there for some 96 years. I mean, not 96 years, 70-something years. Then we have also, the German Chancellor, who stayed there. They don't have that kind of limits. And so it's not really necessarily the length of time, but it's failure to govern. So even if you govern for 4 or 5 years, according to the Constitution, and you don't have the love of the people you govern at heart, even the 2 years is too much. Even the 3 years is too much. Now, let me come to your concern. The Constitution says 5 years. Our position is that once the Constitution prescribes the period of time, I think that presidents must, respect that. And we take great issue with those presidents that want to extend their tenure just in order for them to remain in power without improving their countries, just for the sake of them being called president for the entire life that they live on this earth. So we think it's wrong. But time has come for us now to move our attention from just the 10 years to the quality of leadership in Africa, and also the respect of constitutional democracy in terms of what we agree on as a people. If we say it's 5 years, let's all agree that it's 5 years. If a need comes to increase that time, let it be the decision of the Zambian people or the people of that particular country, because they made the decision for 5 years. They can make the decision for 7 years. They can make the decision for 6 years, like in Liberia. They can make a decision for 20 years. But as long as it's a decision by the people, we do not have a problem with that. But we do have a problem with leaders that are really destroying their countries, and on the other hand, want to extend their tenure in office. And Africa must address this issue as quickly as possible, looking at the quality of leadership on our continent.
I am an African.